Alright everyone, welcome to, man, this is going to be a pretty busy week in Destiny. We're going to have the brand new Heresy weapons launch, we're going to have the Guardian Games weapons launch, and we potentially will even have a new Grandmaster Nightfall weapon with the Lotus Eater coming out as well. Obviously, this video is going to focus on the new Guardian Games weapon and the reprised ones, and I know, shameless plug, but if you haven't seen my other God War videos of the Heresy weapons and even the Lotus Eater, definitely be sure to check those out too. Now, so you all aren't completely bored this time around, I will have gameplay of just a solo flawless dungeon in the top right, and of course I'll have timestamps for every exact weapon that you want to see. Now this video is going to focus mainly on the PvE aspects of the weapons, but since you all seem to like a below average PvP player's opinion on some of these, I'll throw in a couple at the end of each weapon. And then the final thing to note is that all of these weapons in the API right now will not have their icons, but no, these are the weapons that you will be receiving when Guardian Games comes around, and I have listed these in order to what I'm very excited about to what I'm least excited about. Now with that being said, let's start off with the first weapon, and that is going to be the Keraunios. This is going to be an adaptive frame arc trace rifle. Now right off the bat, all of these weapons are going to have the classy contender origin trait, so every single kill you get, you will get 5% class ability energy. Honestly, it's a very good origin trait, especially when you play into some specific builds, which I'll go over some of those once we get to weapons that I really care about that on. But in the first column for this trace rifle, we have Overflow, we have Discord, and we have Eddy Current. I will throw recycled energy in there if they ever do fix this, because obviously pairing that with classy contender, you could get your class ability back very quickly. But as of right now, it doesn't seem to be that good of a perk, and also as of recording this, when you enhance it, it literally doesn't do anything. So this is a little asterisk. We'll include this one if it ever gets fixed, but I wouldn't look out for it until that happens. But in the next column, we do have Detonator Beam, Rolling Storm, Kill and Tally, and Jolting Feedback. Those are pretty much going to be your go-to PvE options. So right off the bat, some combinations you can go for is Eddy Current and Jolting Feedback to play into that arc style of the weapon. You can get amplified very easily. You're going to spread Jolt everywhere, and you get a bunch of benefits. Now, if you don't want to play into that, you can obviously also just take things like Overflow or even Discord, pair with Jolting Feedback. It's going to be good on its own. And with some of the artifact perks coming out with this act as well, trace rifles might actually be pretty good, and Jolting Feedback could potentially be a very good option. If you get an Iron Banner weapon with Jolting Feedback, some like rewind rounds, this one isn't as important unless you just really care about the class and contender part of the weapon, which is good, but also they've changed the Iron Banner origin trait to actually be pretty good in PvE now as well, so it's kind of just up to you on the one you want to use. But speaking of Overflow, you can also pair that with things like Kill and Tally, so you can just keep your damage up on this thing. It can be pretty good. And then the fun perk is obviously Detonator Beam, which I think what most people are going to be going for, so you can cause explosions, you have a very large magazine, and you could just get a bunch of kills with the explosion to proc classic contender, and again, you can get your class ability back very quickly. But don't sleep on Discord, because you can basically just get a kill with your primary weapon swap. You're going to have infinite ammo with the trace rifle. It could be very good. You could even potentially pair that with Kill and Tally as well. And then I think one of the most interesting perks is going to be Rolling Storm. You could again pair this with literally any of the perks, Overflow probably being the best option. And so you will get bolt charge stacks. Now when you get kills, if you're amplified, you will get more. So the way it works on areas not grenade launchers, it stacks very quickly because you're constantly doing tick damage over and over again as the grenade launcher sits on the ground. With trace rifles, shoot very quickly. It's 1,000 rounds per minute, so I imagine you're going to be able to stack this up very quickly, sort of similar to those area denial grenade launchers. And it is another option to get bolt charge. So if you aren't playing into any specific arc build, you could take this. If you want to run this over something like the Palindrome, it could be interesting. I don't think it's going to be the best perk, but obviously it is worth mentioning. But I think the role I will be looking out for the most is just going to be Overflow Detonator Beam. It's a shame it doesn't have Shoot to Loot in the left column over here, because this would just be one of the new go-to weapons for a Cenotaph Warlock, but Overflow is still very good. You can then pair that with Ionized Battery to get a bigger magazine to get more advantage out of Overflow. I probably would just run something like Arrowhead or Fluted Barrel just to get some more handling. Throw on more handling here. You're never going to have to reload, so you can just swap to it very quickly. If you want to play into more range stability, you totally can. And then if you enhance it, you know, you're up to 229 in the magazine. You can cause explosions with this weapon and get class ability energy back. I think it will be pretty good. And if you don't have a decent trace rifle, this is stuff you want to be able to look out for. I just wish it had Shoot to Loot in the left column, because I would be farming that with Detonator Beam like crazy. And then quick for PvP recommendations. In the first column, you have Hipfire Grip, Discord, Perfect Float, Dynamic Sway, and then you compare that with things like Kill and Win. Harmony could be pretty interesting, and even closing time. I guess kill and tally, maybe even dynamic could be interesting, but I think the ones down here are going to be a little bit more important. Obviously, with dynamic sway, it'll be very easy to hit your shots. If you want to hit fire the gun, you could also go with hip fire grip. You could then pair that with closing time. I mean, you're going to have a pretty accurate trace rifle if you are just trying to get those consistent headshots. Now, for the interesting ones, you can play with something like Harmony Discord, get a kill with your primary weapon, swap over to the trace rifle, do a ton of damage, have infinite ammo, and you could just shred people. I think this is going to be honestly a pretty interesting role. Even Harmony just in general, pairing that with things like hipfire grip, so you can just get a kill, swap, hipfire. You might be able to melt a target. I'm not exactly sure what the time to kill is when Harmony is activated. So at tier 10 to tier 9, it goes to a 0.60, and normally it's a 0.73, but this obviously is the optimal TTK. So if you have some body shots, it's going to be 1 second, which will take that down to 0.80, and then it's just a flat 0.60 for everything. So I think that could be very interesting. I don't know how meta defining it will be, but it might be something to look into. And then obviously kill and win, you can also get a bunch of range on every single kill. It could be very interesting. It's kind of just what you want to do. I mean, if you want to go for like a slay out tool, you can go with Harmony, Discord, hipfire, dynamic sway, anything. Or if you just want to go pure consistency, closing time probably will be your best option. But if you want to kill and win, just kind of go on a killing spree with it, you can totally do that too. But all right, let's move on to the title. The title is honestly one of my favorite SMGs in the game. I would say it's the most slept on, since you can only get it like 3 weeks out the year. I don't really want to say that, but it is very, very good, especially when you pair it with specific builds, and mainly those are going to be based on your class ability, because obviously it has the classic contender orchard trait, which you'll get 5% class ability on every single kill. It is worth noting that this also does have Hawk of Breach armaments, but honestly, I wouldn't recommend running that. Classic contender is for sure going to be your better option. So in the first column, you have things like repulsor brace, you have threat detector, and it's honestly about it. You do have recycled energy, which I guess again would be interesting if they ever fix it. This probably will be the go-to perk if it ever becomes a good perk. Pairing that again with classic contender, you'll be able to spam some abilities quite a lot. Now, next up in the right column, the stabilizer rounds is pretty much the only one you're gonna have to worry about, but this also does have things like elemental honing, demoralize, and even things like surround it. But again, the stabilizing rounds is going to be your go-to option. I think everyone knows by now, but with the changes to destabilizing rounds, you pretty much get permanent volatile. So this is going to allow you to have a very, very good at clear SMG that will also grant you class ability energy back. And then the best perk to pair with this is either going to be things like repulsive race, so you can get an overshield. But if you don't want to take something like that, threat detector will probably be your next go-to option, because you get a ton of reload speed when you're surrounded by combatants. This with the stabilized rounds is going to be an at clear machine. And then again, you can plan to classic contender to play into those class ability based builds. You have the brand new hunter aspect, which so when you use your class ability, you'll mark one of those targets. You can get that back very, very quickly because of classic contender. You can even have something like secant filaments on the warlock, so you can get your class ability back with that very easily, since devour also grants class ability energy with that now. And then even obviously with the brand new archetype aspect, storm's keep, you can just spam those a lot more often. And with the stabilizer rounds being able to proc bolt charge, you could do some crazy things with this. So again, you have literally the best at clear perk in the game. You have very, very good synergy with any of these class ability based builds, and you have a ton of reload speed. Now, I will say, if recycled energy does get changed to actually be somewhat of a decent perk, I will 100% be trying to farm a role with recycled energy alongside the stabilizer rounds, because again, you're going to be able to get your class ability back so quick with these two perks combined together, and you already have the basis of a great accurate weapon because of stabilizing rounds. My exact role I would craft is armor piercing rounds, because you will get 5% more damage to enemy shields. If you want to go with something else to increase your reload speed, you totally could here, but I do like having that increased 5% damage. And then I would just go with arrowhead break to get more handling alongside the 100 recoil direction. Probably throw on a reload masterwork on there, and this is going to be a very, very solid SMG. Again, as of right now, you can opt in to take something like threat detector over something like recycled energy, and you get to 100 handling. You're going to get you 88 reload speed with this exact role, since everything will be enhanced. And with all this is for sure going to be one of the brand new best void SMGs in the game, especially if you are playing into class ability based builds. And you can for sure expect to see a build with this somewhere down the line, because I will 100% be farming for this. Because again, I do not want you to sleep on classic contender with class ability based builds. I'm specifically looking at void hunter, and the fact that this does have the stabilizing, it is going to be a very, very good combination. Now for PvP in the first column, you do have things like threat detector, perpetual motion. I've even heard some good things about to the pain as well. Those are probably going to be your 3 go-to options. And then in the right column, you have rangefinder, which I know typically isn't the best anymore, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm looking at these other perks here and I don't really see anything too crazy. under pressure, maybe if the magazine gets low. You get to pair that with close of time and have a very, very accurate weapon as the magazine gets lower. But I don't particularly think you're going to be doing this with the primary weapon. But it is an SMG, so you do shoot the bullets very, very quickly. So I could potentially see it even just proccing it before you go into a fight can be something interesting. I don't think it's going to be meta or anything. And again, just kind of looking at the perks, there's nothing too crazy here for PvP that I could recommend. Again, with something like perpetual motion and, you know, rangefinder maybe being the best option, but I think it's clear that we have way better SMGs in the game now for PvP. And honestly, I wouldn't stress about getting one of these. This is for sure mainly for PvE. Let's jump into our next weapon, and that is going to be the Taraxippos. This is going to be a lightweight frame strand scout rifle. So in the first column for PvE, you have things like 4 times the charm and enlighten action. Those are pretty much your only 2 good perks here. In the right column, you do have things like hatchling, precision instrument, explosive payload, and the new perk tear. We'll throw in kill clip, but I honestly wouldn't really recommend kill clip. So right off the bat, this does not seem that crazy for PvE. With your best option honestly being enlightened action, which is a good perk because I mean you can basically max out the handling and reload speed at max shots. Even if you don't, you still get a very hefty amount of handling and reload speed, so enlightened action will be a pretty good go-to option. You can then pair out that with explosive payload, which is obviously one of the best PvE perks in the game, and you could have a pretty solid strand scout rifle if you don't have anything like this. But honestly, if you have anything like hung jury, you're probably just going to run that, since that can get double damage perks. And I would argue with a scout rifle, you don't really need to enlighten action too much, since you're going to be kind of sitting back anyway. It's not like very imminent to get that reload speed up at all times, but this would be a pretty solid option. You can obviously also pair this with hatchling if you want a hatchling weapon. You know, with enlightened action, hatchling, classic, and tender, you're going to be getting a bunch of class building energy. You can maybe play into this with something like a strand warlock with Weaver's Call, so you can spam your class building a lot more often to make those threat lanes. Then obviously you're just making threat lanes with the gun. The gun feels a lot better. It can be pretty good. I actually do have a role very similar to this, but with just Outlaw. It was one of the first times it came around, and I've used it for a little bit, but it really just isn't the greatest if you are playing into a threatening build, but that is an option. I guess it is also worth noting it has only on fluid dynamics, which will be pretty good for the PvP aspect of the weapon, but for PvE, again, classic contender, probably going to be your best way to go. I guess one other combination you could do is 4 times the charm and precision instrument. So if you're doing something like a GM, you can just keep shooting the gun over and over again on a champion, stack that damage up, never have to reload. That could be pretty good. At that point, I probably would just take a lot of fluid dynamics, since you aren't really going to be slaying out, getting a lot of kills, and you can have a pretty stable weapon that could just constantly shoot a champion. But let's be honest, you could shoot literally anything else at the champion. It will probably be more beneficial than shooting this primary weapon at them. So again, it's up to you if you want to try to farm for a role like this, but I don't think it's worth it. And then again, enlightened action, explosive payload, or hatchling, you know, probably going to be your best go-to options. If you want to play into tear, you absolutely could, to make some enemies severed around them, but I don't really think that's that good either. So overall, the Taraxippos for PvE honestly isn't the greatest. If I had to farm for something, it would definitely just be explosive payload and enlightened action. Then just pair that with something like Akaraz rounds probably, or I mean maybe even steady rounds, anything to just make the gun feel a little bit better. Maybe even a pendant mag, because again, you're going to get max handling, reload speed with enlightened action. You don't really need the range because you have explosive payload. Arrowhead break pretty much as always, get that recoil direction up, and you don't really need the handling though, so you could play into something else. This gun, yeah, I'm just being honest, this gun just doesn't seem that good for PvE. But again, if I had to craft something, this is probably what it would look like. But I'm definitely not going to be going for this gun for PvE. So, but if you are, this is definitely what I would try to get. Now, the contrary, this does have some very good PvP perks, things like Zen Moment, Keep Away. We'll throw enlightened action in there, perfect float, a lone wolf, and then in the second column, precision instrument, kill clip if you want to slay out, explosive payload, also not a terrible option, Eye of the Storm, and I guess we can include high ground, but I know they changed this, so unless there's some specific TTK it can provide, I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy of an increase. Yeah, so I probably wouldn't stress about this too much, but maybe keep one just in case they ever change it in the future. So overall, in the first column, Zen Moment is just pretty much a solid go-to option for every single PvP weapon in the game. I think the new go-to is going to be something like Lone Wolf. You're going to be able to get a bunch of aim assists and a bunch of airborne effectiveness. Airborne effectiveness, I guess, not being too crazy on something like a scout rifle, but that increase to aim assistance is going to be very good, and that increased ADS speed as well. You can then pair that with any other supporting perks, something like precision instrument. This is going to be pretty interesting to increase your time to kill. I mean, as you see here with 2 procs, anybody that's tier 9 or under, you can start 2 headshot, 2 body shot instead of having to go that 3 headshot, 1 body. Normally, with 3 procs, you're going to have things like just a 3 headshot on tier 7 and under, 2 headshot, 2 body shot on tier 10 resilient guardians. it could be pretty interesting. I know Precision Instrument is definitely one of the most sought after perks in PvP now, just to make weapons feel a little bit more consistent. But even if you don't want to take something like that, you can go with Explosive Payload, which I know honestly isn't the greatest PvP perk anymore, but it is still, I guess, a decent option if you don't have anything else you want to go for. But if you just want to go for a super consistent shooting experience, if you're in a 1v1, Eye of the Storm is going to be a very, very good option. You get that increased handling, you're going to get that increased accuracy calling and everything of the sort. It's very, very good for when you're 1v1s, especially if you're just kind of laning with another Scout Rifle user. There's probably a good chance you will come out on top if you do have Eye of the Storm. And again, in this first column, it's honestly up to you. Keep away is very good. I would argue you don't need it as much because the range on the Scout Rifle, I guess, isn't most like greatest thing to get. But Zen Moment, again, very good option. And even Perfect Float if you're just playing into that airborne effectiveness. But if you're doing that at that point, I probably would just take Lone Wolf. Lone Wolf Eye of the Storm or Lone Wolf Precision Instrument, probably going to be my go-to role for this. And I think this honestly will have a pretty good spot in PvP. Pairing that with Oman Fluid Dynamics, I mean, you're going to get that increased stability, increase your load speed at the top half of the magazine, and this will be pretty solid. Now, finally, the weapon everyone has been waiting for, the Hullabaloo. Definitely one of the best names in the game for all the weapons in the game. But this is going to be a compressed waveframe arc heavy grenade launcher. So this is just going to shoot out the little waves on the ground, and you kind of have to use them for ad clear, which in general kind of makes them bad. But there is one specific place in the game where they're decent, and that is going to be on the first boss fight in the Vesper's dungeon. So if you don't have a Hullabaloo, you might want to farm one of those specifically for that. But in the first column, you do have things like Volt Shot, Field Prep, Envious Assassin, Envious Arsenal, even Stats for All for what you're playing into, and Demolitionist. And then the second column, Golden Tricorn, Chain Reaction, One for All, Cascade, Rolling Storm, Strategist, even Adrenaline Junkie. And there's a lot of good perks on here. It's the fact that the frame itself is kind of Now, for what they want you to do it for ad clear, we'll talk about that here first. Obviously, Classic Contender, you're going to get your class ability back. You can pair that with Demo, you're going to get, you know, class ability and grenade energy back every single time you get kills, which is cool. I know Volt Shot is kind of the one that stands out to a lot of people, but the fact that you have to reload to proc Volt Shot makes me not want to use it because it's a heavy grenade launcher. It's going to reload pretty slow. If you're playing into any sort of build that can just reload the weapon without having to actually reload the weapon, that could be pretty good. Again, for ad clear, just kind of killing everything. But I would almost argue taking something like Field Prep to get that increased ammo reserve and get that increased your load speed is probably going to be the best if you are using it for ad clear, because with these weapons, you don't have like a crazy amount of ammo, and if you're running a heavy for ad clear, you probably just want to run a machine gun because they do have a crazy amount of ammo, and arguably could do what this does better because you can use it at a range, whereas this you have to be super close. Yes, it can take out a large group of ads a lot faster than a machine gun can, and that's why I think Field Prep will kind of come into play. But if you don't want to have to worry about reloading, you can take something like Envious Assassin, and you can just stack this thing up like crazy at 15 rounds. It can be pretty good. Envious Arsenal is interesting, but I'm gonna be honest, you're not really using this in any DPS rotation. If there ever is a point where we need to use a Hullabaloo for DPS rotation, though, I would definitely recommend farming for one of these just in case. I mean, we also, with the first boss in Vespers, no one ever thought this weapon was going to be decent, but the waveframe grenade launchers actually ended up being pretty solid specifically for that boss. So if there's ever some sort of boss like that in the future, and there is a need to DPS swap and DPS rotate, I'm not even trolling, you might want to farm a Hullabaloo just to be safe. Obviously, in the game right now, it's not going to be the craziest thing, but for the future, I mean, you never know at this point. Bungie is cooking up some crazy boss design with the lock set, with that Vestus boss. Who knows? We could potentially see something where, you know, DPS swapping with a Hullabaloo might be a go-to strategy. So I would be farming for one of these just to be safe. But let's be honest, right now in the game, no one's really going to use it. Stats for All is also pretty decent since you'll be able to hit multiple enemies very quickly. You can proc this and you get a bunch of stats. Now, in the second column for ad clear, though, Chain Reaction, obviously, probably going to be your go-to option. You just have this huge wave. You have a bunch of ammo with Field Prep. You could just destroy a lot of things. There are other options. Something like Strategist could be interesting because pairing that with Classic Contender, you're going to just get a ton of class ability energy back. If you ever need to get your class ability back very quickly, you can run this. Probably get 1 or 2 shots off of the thing since it can kill multiple enemies, and you're going to get your class ability back. Maybe I can see some utility, purposes of getting this. I don't really see it being anything too crazy, but if there's ever any like speed run where you need to get your class ability back very quickly, this could have you covered. Rolling Storm being the other interesting perk that it has now, but again, I don't really think you need it too much. And if you are running Rolling Storm on this weapon, unless there's just some crazy interaction that we don't know about yet with the waveframe grenade launchers, because this will be the first waveframe to have Rolling Storm, I don't particularly see why you would need it, but I guess keep an eye out just in case there is some, you just get max sacks on 1 kill or something. think it'll be like that, but who knows. And then for pretty much Ackler, that's honestly it. I mean, chain reaction, fill prep is probably going to be like the go-to option for me. You can take hot velocity rounds, get that increase your load speed up. Then with these, you definitely want to get your blast radius up, since you are going to be trying to Ackler with it as much as possible. So you can just hit a bunch of enemies. If you want to take something else other than something like fill prep, chain reaction, you could obviously go with volt shot as well. You're going to lose out on a crazy amount of reload speed and the ammo reserve, but this is a fun roll. I'm not even going to lie, it is very fun. Or if you just never want to have to reload, Envious Assassin as you cover. And then, like I was saying earlier, if there ever is a time, something like Envious Arsenal is going to be very, very good. Specifically on the Vesper host boss, One for All is disgustingly strong. You get that 35% damage reduction proc so quickly, and just in the boss fight, you're going to be able to just constantly do damage over and over again. I would definitely pair that with Envious Assassin, except if you are loadout swapping. If you're not, just take Envious Assassin. You can just unload a whole bunch of ammo, proc One for All, very easy to kill that boss. Now, for the future, I would probably just go with something like Envious and Cascade Point, because you can proc Cascade Point and then also proc Envious at the same time, swap to it, unload the ammo very, very quickly. The reason I wouldn't go with something like One for All, because you don't exactly know what the boss is going to be like, but if you want to get a One for All one too, just to be safe, you could. But I think Envious Cascade Point for future proofing may be a decent option. But again, this is literally just cope. You know, if you don't want to farm for this, I don't think it's going to be that much of a detriment. But if you're going for something like a day one and this is ever somewhat of a, you know, actual potential boss DPS thing, you might be a little sad you didn't farm it back when this was around. And then for PvP, I mean, I don't really see a lot of people use these things in PvP, but Impulse Amplifier probably is going to be your best option. And then just pairing that with any ability regen perk. I mean, I guess maybe Cold Tricorn could be interesting, but Chain Reaction probably going to be your best perk, because you could just maybe get some multi-kills with it. This is probably what I would go for. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think many people are gonna be using these in PvP, but if there ever was one to get multi-kills, you get the increased velocity on the grenade, and this is probably what I would go for. But that is all of the brand new Guardian Games weapons. This video has been going on for, I've recorded for 33 minutes, so I'm not sure what that's gonna chop down to, but definitely be sure to let me know which one you all are excited for in the comments below. And again, if you haven't seen any of my other God Roll videos, definitely be sure to go check those out as well, since we're gonna have a ton of weapons coming this week. I think what I'm most excited for is for sure going to be getting one of these brand new titles, pairing that with Save Velocity and Recycled Energy or Threat Detector. Hopefully Recycled Energy, again, if they fix it, this is going to be a very, very good for specific builds. Taraxippos, I don't really care about. Hullabaloo, I don't really care about. I am excited for the Trace Rifle, but I think there are just other better options, something like the Dungeon Trace Rifle. Even if you got an Iron Band Trace Rifle, kind of like I said in the beginning, that one will probably do you well, but this is going to be pretty good. And again, depending on how Rolling Storm works with both of these weapons, you know, we could potentially see some sort of new Rolling Storm meta for our specific weapons. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Anyway, so that's going to do it all for me. I wish you all the best of luck on farming these for yourself. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.